So, for everyone joining us, welcome to the first episode of basically what will just centre around a hobby hangout. Me and Myles had some extra time in our schedules. Like, I've just gone part-time at work. Myles is a dirty layabout that's been doing hobby for years professionally.
Yeah, been stealing a living doing this somehow.
So, yeah, do you want to say why we're doing this and the amount that we're doing?
Yeah, so I went on this huge diatribe just before we went on live. So it's a weird thing to say as a professional miniature painter, but I don't get much time to actually work on the stuff for myself. I'll try and cram things in around other commissions, but it's not like I've got a tremendous amount of time. I can just sit and spend and look at the miniatures and go, "Ooh, this is nice." So we have a gap in our schedule, and we've decided to put ourselves in here where we can just work on stuff for ourselves, whether that's building miniatures, painting miniatures, looking at old artwork, whatever, just indulging in the hobby a little bit. Max and I, we talk to each other quite often, and like any middle-aged white guy, we think, other people would be interested in listening to our conversations. So with that level of hubris, we are going into our first episode with, we're not going to make any promises. We talked about this before, how Max and I, we listen to the second podcast whenever we do anything. We always listen to the second one, because the first one's always, this is who I am, this is our manifesto, we're trying to bring hobby positivity. No, none of that. We are just going to sit and talk, and whatever comes out comes out.
Yeah, and I think at the risk of actually getting into that by doing an introduction any further, shall we talk about the main excitement of the 2 weeks? Creed music. But other than that, we met up this weekend to do an Ultramarines army, like a bit of a speed painting session. So yeah, we did that, and while we were down there, it's being documented in segments on Instagram, and then soon there will be a full video. And while we were down there, we got talking about the old world, right?
I think it's worth it. Can't emphasize this enough. This isn't an old world centric chat. It just so happens that the old world came out last week. We're both enthusiastic about it. We're both collecting projects for it. So we are both doing it.
Yeah, so it just happens to be what's on this time, right?
Yeah, so it could be Horus Heresy next week. It could be Warhammer 40k. It could be Necromunda. It could be something else that we're both passionate about. This is a rambling conversation that we will have to keep ourselves on track with some projects that we've got going on in the background.
And you want to a slow
unsurprisingly.
Yeah, I know.
So on the Discord, I mean, you came down the weekend that the old world got us released. Now, you and I are big fantasy heads. Before the Horus Heresy, the old world was like my main crush. I had I'm doing the thing that I said that we wouldn't, like qualifications in the hobby. I've been here since I was 13, but I've had this Dark Elf army since I was 13. I remember coming home from Swansea Games Workshop, reading the Myles Darkblade comic and going, this guy, he's a bit of a right, this is for me. And then when the old world blew up, it killed a little bit of my soul. It killed, I think, a lot of a little bit of our souls. Now, with the introduction of the old world, so there's a phrase, the Dark Elves were very much of their time. They were a part of my personality as a 13-year-old kid, just on the cusp of adolescence. Started listening to Linkin Park a lot more. I started wearing a lot more black in my day-to-day. They were a part of my personality at that time. A large portion of why I'm involved in the hobby is nostalgia. But nostalgia can be a little bit of a poison, because you are recreating or trying to recapture that feeling you had when you were a 13-year-old boy driving back from a Games Workshop reading a Myles Darkblade comic. The Dark Elves...
What's wrong with that, Wyatt, Myles?
Yeah, nothing wrong with it whatsoever, nothing at all. But the Dark Elves, they kind of like have the world on their shoulders, and they are the woe of the world. Whereas this time round, I want to participate joyfully in the woe of the world. I want to collect Warriors of Chaos. Looking back at the history of the Warriors of Chaos, you can see they almost have markers throughout Games Workshop's history. There you go. I'm going to show off a little bit here. There you go. So I've got...
These are Myles' credentials.
Yeah, these are my credentials. Look, I've bought stuff before. Now, I know it's going to be a controversial opinion, but I think the finest books ever produced for Chaos was around this time. These were my favorite books that were released, because not only is the artwork bright and colorful and eye-catching and amazing, when you look through it, you have all these like bright reds and greens. And when you look at the Chaos Warband, it's very different to maybe some that you see today, where it's a lot more coherent. No, these are warbands that have coalesced around champions, around these beautiful miniatures. And that's the feeling I want to hit with this new Chaos Army, that I want to collect individuals. I want to go back over the back catalogue and find those miniatures I loved growing up as a kid, because I feel like I've got the skills now to carry it through and actually do them. So that's my...
Does that mean you're going to be finding classic models that you're then going to be painting, or are you going to be doing that out of more Slaves to Darkness models and, say, like Warcry models, because they've got a great range now?
Credential number 2.
We're not going to do
I did a little... Yeah, credentials,
credentials.
I've had a little bit of an audit of all my Chaos stuff. Just things I've randomly collected over the years. Things like this miniature. I bought this miniature even not having a Warriors of Chaos army, because look at it. It's amazing. And it's so heavy. You could kill someone when this is made. So that's
the Khorne Lord, or the metal Khorne Lord on...
Yes, on Juggernaut.
Yeah. Just for anyone
I picked up
this podcast format.
Yes. So I picked up this ace.
Right, there we go.
There are other miniatures as well, like this Sile the Faithless is...
And behind.
Yeah.
That's a pretty grisly model.
Chaos Spawn. Yeah, so Chaos Spawn, that's something I'm keen to introduce into this. But yeah, I've done a hobby audit of everything in here as well, in this nice big pink container of everything I own. And I do own quite a lot. I mean, I own an army. It doesn't really work together in synthesis, but I do own an army. So to begin with, sorry, I feel like I'm hogging this conversation.
No, it's fine. So basically, I think what we do is, if we go through like your approach to how you're going to approach the old world, then we'll go through my approach to how we're going to do the old world, and then we'll say like, how can anyone listening join in with this and participate in like a way that will like display on this as well. Perfect. So yeah, continue with serial killer monologue, please, Myles.
So this leads on to army collecting. How do I want to structure this? Well, it comes from this book, Realms of Chaos. So Thomas, I want to make sure I get is it Prinin? Yeah.
We're very sorry, Thomas, I want to make sure if you're listening for that pronunciation.
Book cover, Jeff Taylor, awesome. Thomas Prinin and Rick Priestley.
Well, the writer of Mordheim, like most famously, I would say. Who's still posting about it now, and he's posted up like new warband since. Really dedicated hobbyist. So like just looking at some of the artwork in here. Yeah.
This is the kind of vibe I want to go for with my army, and more so than
very
everything.
Metal sort of theme. You
heavy metal.
To a lot of Bolt Thrower while you're
Bolt Thrower, Creed, like really heavy stuff.
Creed, really.
Creed. But one of the innovations he came up with for this was basing a warband around a character. So you would buy a character. In this case, you'd buy Charon Baal, which is a Chaos Sorcerer, 416 points. And you'd need to buy a unit or units that equal or surpass that points value. So Charon's retinue consists of 12 Chaos Warriors, total 850 points. And then you had the Chaos Lord on Steed with a fast-moving element around it. So I would like to structure my army around this principle, around characters, around strong individuals, almost like cults of personalities.
Yeah.
And for this, we are planning to do a slow grow. You and I are via the Discord server. And I've been thinking about ruminating, how exactly do I do this? What's the first 500 points? Because with these slow grow campaigns, you can't get sucked into, okay, for 500 points, I need a character and I need someone else. But what works well at 500 points doesn't work well at 2,000, 2.5. And I don't want to buy units at a small scale for them not to work later on. And I've been annoying the piss out of you talking about Marauders over the past few weeks.
Yeah.
Because I'm really not sure.
What I think you've underestimated is my love of sort of Hordes of Chaos and my ability to talk about both Marauders and Marauder Horsemen at great length.
And I'm not sure, because Marauders, whenever I faced them in 8th, they were a big block, but they had a soft underbelly. You could flank them, you can kill a lot of them. They break very easily. They were the soft underbelly of an army. They weren't an anchor. But visually, that's the problem visually. When you look at a combined Warriors of Chaos army, you have certain elements to them that you want to include. Chaos Warriors, for me, Knights, because I want fast-moving elements. The Chaos Lord, like the big head honcho, the alpha male, the alpha wolf for the collection. Spawn, some kind of gribbly unit in there. And Marauders go along with the silhouette of the army. And I hate to not include them because of a game reason.
Well, I don't know whether you should worry about that. So looking, the book, GMG has gone through the book. If anyone wants to see this right now rather than wait until next Saturday, GMG Reviews has gone through all, not all of the books in Forces of Fantasy, but he's gone through a lot of them. Now, Marauders seem to have a shield wall rule, and they've got the Horde rule. So that means you're going to get 3 rank bonus instead of 2. And I can't remember what shield wall does. Or maybe it's not even been said, but basically they've got a few rules to keep. They are a bit hardy, but you're going to basically not have them just immediately break and run away because they have got things to deal with that. They'll still be the weaklings of the list, but they're a weapon skill 4 weakling that is a better weapon skill than most other things.
They do outclass most infantry in the world. But I think they suffer in comparison next to a Chaos Warrior on foot as well. But that's not the fault of the Marauder.
If they didn't, I think the games designers had done something tragically wrong.
Exactly.
They're not there to be the smashiest bit.
But that's a worry.
In the army, other than these warbands,
the theme.
What's the overall theme? Do they fit into that, or could you lean away from it?
So I like really fast-moving elements. I like really fast-moving armies. I like armies where I can participate in lots of aspects of the game. But I tend to do this. I tend to go. I lean very drastically into one aspect or another. So my Sons of Horus army, for example, all just staring. It's a cool army to play. It's visually very impressive, but there's only really one way to play them. There's not much versatility in there. Blood Angels, same thing, all very fast-footed, aggressive, on the front foot. But you can only really play, the way I've built the army, you can only play them in one way. And when you look at, more credential showing here, looking back at when they re-released Chaos in November 2008. Look at that.
So this is the 7th edition era of Chaos.
Yes. They presented in White Dwarf a, stereotypical Chaos army.
Yeah.
And I think when I visualize an army, what I want from my collection, I want something closer to that rather than something that is maybe more optimized or has a lot of... so my initial conception was fast-moving, lots of cavalry, lots of chariots, lots of horsemen, lots of wolves, that kind of thing. But I'd be missing out on things like... and modelling opportunities as well, like with the Marauders, what can you put in the middle to bulk out the unit? Because I do not want to paint it. Yeah, I don't want to paint 30-plus Marauders. I don't. what can I use to bulk them up? And I think when I project myself in the future and look back at the decisions I'm making now, I want something closer to this than I do just a purely lopsided representation of maybe like a fast-moving army.
So I can maybe give a bit of experience on that. So for any battle reports on the channel that people want to watch, if they're really interested in 6th still, that's the army that I play is a Kurgan horde, or it's the Wei 2 tribe, which means wall attacker in pig Chinese.
Yep.
And that was one that was featured in the 6th edition book. Now they, being Kurgan, were like the steppe tribes of the world. So I've got
okay. These are your hobby credentials.
Jebe Khan, who is the scourge of the old world, and if you want to see how one of those fast cav armies operate, I'll be playing that in the next few weeks. Now, what I can say is it does hem you in quite a lot. Like, that army that I've got a few infantry units that I bulked out mainly for the channel, but when I was playing it just for myself and and just making the decisions entirely based on that, it was like 5-6 units of Marauder Horsemen, 3 units of Wolves, and a unit of Chaos Knights. And then like a spawn that looked like a horse. Like a Sentai horse.
Right, okay. Yeah, that's very on theme.
Yeah, so everything was centered around it, and it was quite limiting. And even though there was a very strong theme to the horsemen, it was limiting in what I could take. Now, there's a little bit more that can go there. Like, I'll be adding to the army like Dragon Ogres, now that they can go in. They weren't in there in 6th. So I'll be adding things like that. But yeah, if you're looking for this like warband style centered around the leader, I think that's a good theme for it as well, in that, well, you attract followers from all over as a Chaos. Like, are you going Chaos Lord, or are you just a champion at the moment? An aspiring champion.
That leads us rather nicely onto the next segment. I think we're both a fan of Paul Sawyer and the Path to Chaos series he did in White Dwarf.
Path to Glory!
Path to Glory, yeah, which is probably like 20 years old now, something ridiculous.
I'm going to edit this in as if I didn't just run downstairs to grab it, but I think Myles is referring to the Path to Glory booklet from 6th edition. If anyone wants to find it, it's also Googleable as a PDF, and if someone's really having trouble, shoot me a message and I'll send it across to you. But go on, Myles, continue.
Yeah, Path to Glory, but he ran a campaign, or he ran a slow grow in that, akin to the Tale of Warlords that he did previously. And he started with, is it Vradchuk, the Chaos Lord character he had?
Maybe Valrak. And whatever it is.
Something like that, yeah.
Get hung up on the character of Paul Sawyer's.
Hold on, let me run downstairs and find the White Dwarves and dig them up and have a look through them. So he started with this Chaos Lord, just a guy with a couple of axes, and he built it around this principle. So he started with 500 points, had a couple of games. I need more fast-moving elements to this. I'm going to get Chariot. I need something to compete in the magic phase now, so I'm going to buy a wizard. And month on month, he built up his army, and I think it came across during the writing that he was coming up against more optimized lists. So I remember he came up against a Dark Elf list in a campaign, like a 1,000-point campaign. There was just 4 units of Dark Riders.
Yeah.
And in 7th, 8th edition, that was a horrific list to come up against because there was so much more money. And all he had, I think this is where my hang-up for Marauders come from. He had a unit of Marauders, Vradchuk on a chariot, and maybe a couple of dogs. And he couldn't do a goddamn thing against the Dark Elf list. And at the time, I was like, oh my God, that's an optimized list. I want to create Dark Elves. But
I'm a 13-year-old power gamer.
Yeah, exactly, because you like replicating things that work in the game, and you get the sense of power, like, I'm a powerful warlord now. But, I've grown up since then, and I don't get the chance to play that much. So having said all that, where exactly is this all leading? So 500 points, what exactly is that? I'm kind of guesstimating based off what I've seen previously. So I'm thinking for 500 points, I could get away. I need a character, at the very least. 10 Chaos Warriors and like a pack of wolves.
Yeah.
Or dogs. Because I think even when I grow the army beyond that, they can still find a place in 2.5K armies. And even if the Chaos Warriors don't make it, maybe they could be converted into Chosen, or I can use them in lower level games. And there's 10 guys to get me going. It will get me into the rhythm of painting.
So, no, go on.
I think it's a good investment. Yeah, 10 Chaos Warriors, I think is a good investment, plus the wolves. But the character, who do I start this path to glory with? Well, I dug up this little gem.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
This guy, I'm wondering, my idea for him is that he will be a lower level lieutenant in the army. This will be a minor warlord, chieftain in my list. And my plan is to have a full-on Chaos Lord converted later on the steed to lead the faster-moving elements. However, having said that, following along Paul Sawyer's army, I might upgrade him. I might pop him on a chariot later on.
Yes.
I'm not sure, depending how well he does. So if he kills everything in his way, well, I'll need to upgrade him in some way, and put him on the chariot is a nice way to do that. But he does certainly suffer in comparison to some of the new sculpts, just in sheer size.
Yeah, but look at that halberd or axe, man. He's
got the girth.
Yeah, he's got the sort of
the girth.
over-exaggerated weapon for hero scale that you can really lean into for that Red Era look that you're going for.
Yeah, and it's, nostalgia. Again, nostalgia kills. The Chaos range is full of seminal miniatures. When you look back, I remember the first time I saw a collection of miniatures and just salivated over. It was the Champions of Chaos miniatures, where each one was god-aligned and had different aspects to them. I want to go back and paint some of those miniatures. I want to go back and paint some of the miniatures that I've seen previously and I've just fallen in love with. And then there are more modern sculpts, like these outrageous Plague Ogres released by Forge World.
Oh, yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, I have a set of 3 of these. So later on down the line, I'm sure I could find a way for them. But my first 500, 600 points will be unit of 10 warriors, 5 dogs, and a champion to lead them. Yeah, that's the initial plan.
No,
but I've talked a lot. What are your initial plans with the old world? What's your inspiration? What are your hobby credentials?
Well, just first, I wanted to
justify
say,
yourself.
I actually think those warriors are going to stand up in bigger games. Like a big block of warriors, I do think they're gonna stand up. The wolves, even if I'm considering adding, looking at the rule books. I'm considering adding more dogs to my own army, 5-6 units of dogs, just to get the more drops into my army.
So they'd be so there'd be more of them, but around 5 dogs a unit.
Yeah, and then you can use that for blocking people in the same way as you're saying. Fast Cat is really good for your dark elves, so you can block people. You can just see what people are doing at deployment by having lots of, because it's alternating drops for the game. So if I have a unit of dogs that only declares where 30 points is going, I don't have to put down my 400-point block of warriors straight away. Yeah. So it just allows you to see a bit more what the enemy's doing. So I think both of those units will actually translate really well. Or from my own.
So with the Chaos Warriors, would you recommend I bulk them up to 20?
I have a feeling, because rank bonus is capped at 2 now, and everyone on the front rank gets to fight. I have a feeling that units are going to be 7, 8 wide, or even Chaos Warriors with 1 attack. Everyone in the front rank gets 1 attack, even if they're not in base contact. So if you go 10 wide, everyone's still getting their 1 attack. So I reckon we're going to get these big long lines that look like historical armies having these big frontages. That's what I think we're going to be seeing rather than 5 wide. So I think getting, I would say 21, because that gets you the full rank bonus of 2, as well as 7 on the front. And I have a feeling that around there is going to be where to start.
Okay.
So yeah, like 20,
Perfect.
20 with a character would get you that 21. Because we all know we want to collect units in squares, right? You don't want to add the character and then have a guy at the back.
Yeah. It's just the odd one out. I mean, there's a lot of people in this community, myself included, very OCD inclined. Having that one extra guy,
well, it'd kill me.
Sleepless nights over that. Yeah, but what about you? What are you collecting in this new old world? What's your approach?
So, having already got a Chaos Army, I didn't want to just like add things to it. I wanted like not quite a fresh start, but something that could be a project that's self-contained. So I'm going to do the Bretonians because I want to do. I've got a Vampire Counts army that's themed around Mausolon. Now, not from Mausolon.
What is the timeline?
I think it's 200 years before, or 300 years before, I think.
Oh.
So whether or not, and I'm sure Mausolon was in there at that time, but I'll just need to double check it. But yeah, so I'm going to be theming a Bretonian army around sort of Mausolon or the Red Duke, and because I'm going to be doing like a more full army theme, I'm approaching it from more a gaming perspective than you are. I have started out with the old world builder, which is, sorry Myles, I'm just going to cut away from you for a second, which is an app that came out about 2 days after like the pre-release came. So this is a good way to get information if you're salivating for it before getting the books next Saturday. So I've thrown together a 500 points list, and that's a paladin on Warhorse with a lance. I've got a paladin with battle standard bearer, and then I've got 6 knights of the realm, 21 men at arms, and 10 peasant bowmen. And I just want it to be sort of a more like a turnip farmery list where it has these knights that are going to be shining examples of like sort of not the knightly virtues, because they'll be like dark, like they'd be like the Black Riders. But I wanted a small unit of knights or small units of knights, and then the peasants that are always going to be in the background of shots when I take them. Even when it's like, here's my unit of peasant bowmen, it will have a unit of knights in the foreground. So
that's awesome.
So it will all be sort of like this heroized propaganda-y poster, even when I'm supposed to be focusing on the peasants. So yeah, that's going to be sort of vampire-y Bretonian themed, and then that can lead into a Vampire Counts army when I said I'll get further into it. Now, to start with on that, I've obviously ordered the Bretonian box because it's classic miniatures coming back. It seemed like a natural place to start just because it includes the rule book and has just like the core of what I wanted. It's got a couple of units of knights and a load of peasants, and that was just perfect.
And, you know, there's something awesome about buying an army in a box. When we started collecting, again, hobby credentials again, used to get like the old second, third, fourth, fifth edition box sets, like High Elves, Dark Elves, Chaos, in those huge boxes.
Yeah.
And, you know, they were about £100, and nobody could afford them as a kid.
Yeah.
So it is quite, you get that tactile feeling of just having, an army in a box and all the stuff that goes with it.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Now, that'll give me like the sort of the core of the army. What I'm showing now is going to be the start of my paladin for my, obviously, Mausolon Counts. What I was planning on doing is using this is the Lost Kingdom Miniatures battle standard bearer that came out a couple of years ago. Now, they do a non-heraldic version, so you can paint your own. So I can go with more of a, like sort of an evil theme than these very like heroic themes that they've got across the model. And I'm going to replace the head with a vampire head from, is it Vlad who's got his like hand?
It's Vlad. Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to replace it with the Vlad head that will have the hair swept in the same way. And that's basically, I've set up the army like this with the 2 paladins at the start, because what Bretonian army doesn't have a battle standard bearer? So that felt like the perfect place to start. Yeah, and I just love this miniature. It's got loads of character, and I think
it's really nice and dynamic.
Yeah.
It is really nice and dynamic. Yeah, and the head swap I think will work as well. And it's nice it comes with a non-heraldic version, so you can. So with your muslin, are you thinking going sort of like grimdark? Because we've just been having a flick through Instagram and Google to see what inspirations are out there. Do you think you'll lean into grimdark with them at all?
So I think my favourite aspect of fantasy, like where you have mentioned the Red era before, my love of Sixth mainly comes from what I see as the sort of like tone that was put into Sixth. So I'm going to transplant that onto stuff that I do for the old world, and that is, I feel it was much more grim fantasy than say like Eighth or Fifth was. So I'm going to be going more grim dark feel with these, and be a lot dirtier. I'm going to flick to one of the ones you actually linked to me before, which is the Peasants, done by Hrothgar Wolf.
Yeah.
And something, not this exactly, because I don't just want to rip them off, but
Inspired
something like this
by,
really,
it.
inspires me to do like that sort of downtrodden peasant. There's a bit in the 6th edition fluff where the Bretonian peasants, it's like an inversion of the real world. They have to give up 9/10 of their produce to the lords rather than 1/10.
Yeah.
So it's the real downtrodden turnip farmers that I want to get the feel into my army. They're all sick because they're in Morzelon. And
none of them have teeth.
Yeah, and I think that will come across best with sort of a grim dark feel rather than a more high fantasy painted army with very, although this has got bright colours, it's all muted down, right, by the weathering.
Well, it's yellow, and I think yellow gives you a really nice basis for that, because if you go in grimdark, if you start with already like black or dark green, it's quite hard to generate the weathering. But because they have that nice bright heraldic yellow field, when you put an oil streak or whatever over that, it really makes that much more of an impact to it. And just looking at some of the reference images, the skin tone, and it's a nice contrast as well. You have these bright yellow shields, you have the glimmer and glamour of feudal Bretonia, but you have these really emaciated, sick serfs in the army, and you could contrast that with the knights, which have slightly more golden skin tones and healthier skin tones as well. I think that would be a cool juxtaposition between the two.
All of my knights will be helmeted, Miles, because none of my knights.
Oh no! That is something I'm thinking about my Chaos army, because that's the trend, right? That. Or when you look at any of the artwork, they're all helmeted. Archaon helmeted, Arbal, Hellbrass, they all got helmets. I want to include a few more unhelmeted heads in my collection because I like painting skin. Skin.
Well, so my Chaos Lord actually had an unhelmeted head. He was helmeted, but you could see the face through it. It was like a Mandalorian without the visor.
Yeah.
And I do.
How about your Lord?
Go on.
For your Breton, how about your Lord for your Bretonian army? Is he going to be helmeted? Is he going to be like a full-on vampire?
Because I will have the paladin without the helmet. He will probably be the only unhelmeted knight in the army, and that's because I want to put more emphasis on the battle standard bearer. Like if I'm already drawing attention there with like the battle standard, the face, having my Lord stand out in a different way. Will be something that I want to focus on. Just so there's like, it's black and yellow across the army. So then I want that the as much variation within the modelling as I can do. Is what I will be going for.
And it's really nice to be talking along these lines, right? So Heresy, which we are like very, very heavily into, it tends to revolve around one or two different styles, and it's very much rooted in military scale modelling. And over the years, I feel like I've almost become like mired in that style of miniature painting. And then when you talk about Warhammer armies, like we're talking about different styles, we're introducing like more fantasy-esque elements. You're going more grimdark with them, so you're taking military scale modeling and putting them into like a fantasy universe, seeing how that flies. It's a really nice conversation to have when we're approaching projects like this.
Yeah, well, he's also, I think the fantasy setting will allow us to do wild differences in colour across the model rather than focusing on, right, this armour is standardised because it's obviously a future military, but standardization is more prevalent across the armies.
Yeah.
Whereas because it's based on a medieval world, there's much less standardization other than, say, the heraldry of these peasants that we're still seeing on screen. Other than the heraldry, there'll be much more allowance for different tones, different schemes, even different techniques on the different items, like leather. But however you want to do leather, I don't know whether you want to go into a million sort of like tiny scratches across the leather or tiny like wrinkles.
Well, it gives the opportunity to do it if you want. It's the opportunity. Yeah, it's the opportunity. Which leads us rather nicely. I do want to talk about basing. Am I okay to go into this, or did you want to bring anything else up? Basing. This came about through a conversation with a student. And I'm not sure whether it's sort of my blinkered view on Warhammer Fantasy armies, but when you look at Heresy armies, I think there is a particular emphasis on basing, on context, on what story you're trying to tell. If you collect Space Wolves or Thousand Suns, inevitably they will end up as some kind of Tizgan theme. It's just inevitable. Sons of Horus, for my own Justarian force, I did an Istvan-based campaign based at Coral City. A lot of the armies you're seeing now are being based at the Siege of Terror via the Unreal Wargaming bases. And when I look at Warhammer Fantasy armies, when I think of the Warhammer Fantasy world, what is it? It's this huge, epic, aeon-spanning land that's been corrupted by chaos, that's been blasted by magic. They've had civilizations built, toppled, civilizations built on top and toppled again. You have these huge kingdoms of bare wilderness and wastelands. You have the mysteries of Cathay, the Tomb Kings era, just of fallen empires. And when it comes to basing our miniatures, what do we tend to do? Put a bit of sand on there, maybe a bit of flock and a tuft. How do you? Part of what I run through tuition and via the Patreon is talking about how to simple tricks to sort of like level up your game. Basing is just one of those tricks that you can do. You can buy an Unreal Wargaming base for your Horus Heresy Marines. You can paint it up really simply. Just paint it neatly, put a Marine on it, and it will look infinitely better than flock and anything else you could do to it.
Yeah.
So I think with the Warhammer Fantasy universe, I think this is more I'm telling myself. You should do something more interesting. You should take advantage of this wonderful, amazing world that you have. I was doing the dishes the other day, and this phrase struck me with such clarity. It felt like a baseball bat to the back of my knees. Dragon graveyard.
Dragon graveyard.
Dragon graveyard. Just let that sink in, let that percolate. I have no idea how I'm going to translate this, but I would love to... I'm thinking this dragon graveyard, it's not just a local area of land. This thing spans for leagues in all different kinds of directions. And it makes a very fertile ground for entrepreneurial marauders to come along and steal jewels, because dragons, they digest things by eating gold and jewels and churning it up. So it makes for an interesting setting for and a reason why these competing armies would be there in the first place, picking up trinkets or whatever. I've always been rather taken by the story of Enarion and his dragon. So right at the end of the First War, Great War with Chaos, he's wounded unto death, and his dragon, which I can't pronounce the name of, he's flying off to the island of Cain, where in leagues in all directions, there's just the bodies of the slain. And it's thought to be sort of like a half magical place that if you die in the Warhammer world, your skeleton will be represented there. And that's where the dragon crash lands, dies. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was an area in the world where dragons pick out this area to go crash and die? How do you actually translate this onto the miniatures themselves? Well, I've been thinking in terms of not only the individual models, but the army as a whole. How do I want it represented? I've been thinking about a display board.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool if, again, all leads from that question, wouldn't it be cool if you had a huge dragon snaking its way across this display board, and you had the individual units represented on there. And when it's all linked together, it would create almost like pieces on a puzzle. It would create this dragon spread out across the entirety of the base. Few practical issues with that. One of which being that, as far as I understand, that formation swapping is going to be a lot more prevalent in this edition. So when you get a ranked up unit that looks perfect and has the outline of the dragon, when you reorder them, there might be some complications in just physically putting them next to one another if they don't quite fit together. I think another issue is the reason why people use that flock and base method is that you almost want to have them represented anywhere in the world, that the base almost becomes transparent because of it. And even if you're fighting in Cathay, Ulthuan, Nagarond, wherever you're fighting in this world, the basing is appropriate for that. So these are the issues I'm going to come up against. I'm thinking whether to make the bases sort of more individualized. So instead of them linking them all up in this grand mosaic, instead having just aspects of bones, skulls, etc., and making sure that they work even when they break apart and can be reordered. But I do want... The problem
there is go for the grand idea. Like, it's better to shoot for the stars and fail and reach the moon than it is to...
well, ambition is critical.
All right, Swansea Council.
But yes, I want to take advantage of this world. I want to do something cool. I want to do something... Wouldn't it be awesome if... So I've been looking at toys, like dinosaur toys.
Yeah.
That you could buy on Amazon for cheaply, because I found these ones you can kind of like chip away at. So I can buy a few of those. I could give them to my boy. I can look like an amazing father, and then I can steal the dinosaur at the end, break it apart across these. And I've also found an Etsy site that do like 3D printed skulls and like dinosaur and dragon bits. So I think if I could take a few of those, break them up on the bases, and incorporate them, because when you look at the Chaos Warrior Knights, they're very dynamic. They're a lot more dynamic than their previous versions, having them running over maybe sort of like a dragon head or something like that, I think is going to...
Yeah.
It's going to be a place and a setting and a context which this army is placed in that I think will be visually interesting and lead on to a conversation. When somebody's walking by, they take a look at this. Oh, that's cool. What happens there? And it leads you into a conversation about the army. So that's if you're basing for the new old world, I would urge everybody to take advantage and exploit this wonderful world that these are inhabiting.
Yeah, no, I fully think you should go for the display base style.
I am.
Like, fully.
Yeah.
It will just mean you might have to plan out your, like, say, 2.5 thousand points as you start, right? To get that first 500 points, you're going to have to know what the display base looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is adding sort of like a further layer of complexity on everything on a slow grow campaign. I'm trying to, I'm just making more work for myself.
Yeah, or ultimately. You do the first 500 points and then like the next month is do all of the bases.
Just wing it from there. Yeah. I might end up doing that, yeah. Test piece for me this month.
Yeah, I'm going with a slightly different approach. Like I've seen a few display boards in the 6th edition like groups and events that I've been to in the last couple of years. Now they look absolutely fabulous. However, I've not I can't set out to doing that. I sort of want to make this army not more quickly as in compromising on quality, but I don't want to set out to do the display board.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, that's why I'm worrying about right now. Am I just making a rod for my back that I'm not going to see through?
We could just do it in a weekend.
We could do it in the weekend, yeah. And I've never produced a board like this on this scale, so I'm not even sure. I mean, I've just had a little Google on here, and this looks rather interesting. This looks promising. Just this little MDF display board.
Right, just in the corner, yeah.
Yeah, I could buy one of those, and whatever fits on that board, that's my army.
Yeah, that's the be all and end all of it. Yeah. So here, and actually it was 146 weeks ago that I did this basic experiment for my Vampire Counts army. Now I'm going to be going for like a marsh theme to my army, and that's Phil was at one point doing a Bretonian army from I can't remember where it was. It was like the hunting place with the boar as the heraldry. Now he was going to do like azure fields or like flowers and grass. So I thought it'd be really interesting if when the armies met, it was like the Mausolon army coming out of the swamps.
At the bog.
It bordered the land of where Phil's Bretonians were. So I'm going to be doing these bases again, was my idea. And that's basically, I've used actual dirt for the dirt, clear resin mixed with a bit of paint for the resin areas and water areas, and I've just basically put in bits of plants, and there's a chopped up paintbrush for the long grass and reeds. And essentially I'll put the models down onto the dirt and do that bit first, and then do the clear resin afterwards, so their feet are submerged within the base. But that was my idea for basing. It's 3 years old. And
it's a good base.
I might improve it a little bit. Like the grass, I don't think is the best. I might use like a product rather than a static grass like I used here, just because it'll get visually a nicer look. I think doing it as a tuft rather than scattered and laying down across the base. But yeah, that was my idea for basing.
No, it's good. I mean, again, it's that
idea.
It's that sense of place. It's that sense of context that they have. They're emerging from the bog, and everything from that. So from the mud splatter on the bases to the weathering, to the style, to the feel, it's all established on that. So I often think that the base is sort of like a scenic background, only instead of being behind the miniature, it's on the base. Yeah. It's on the bottom of it. It's reflecting the world around it, and it informs the miniature because of it. And in this fantasy universe where you can have things like dragon graveyards or like a elf outpost that's fallen into ruin, you can have an old one, ziggurat, smashed to pieces and dashed across jungles. You've got deserts, you've got wasteland, you've got do something a little bit more interesting than just a little bit of sand, a little bit of flock, and then a tuft on top of it. Yeah. It elevates everything else about your work. Absolutely. Just that little bit more effort that you put into your army, I think it just elevates absolutely everything about it.
I think even like, I started using actual dirt instead of sand. Like you don't, for one, it's easier. Yeah. You don't have to paint it. Dirt looks more like dirt than any other substance that I've found. And when you've PVA'd that mixture, putting sort of tufts or whatever companies like grass
products,
that you want, name it. And there's so many more options. Like flowers look so much better in the fantasy world because they could actually be about like longer bits, shorter bits. All of these things that would be seen in the natural world will fit more than the industrial theme that we see in sci-fi worlds. And it's just again like the painting that you were saying before, just a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, to try something different, try something new.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's the end of the two hobby sections. We've gone through how we are going to approach this slow grow. And basically, if anyone wants to get involved in this sort of thing with us, we'll be setting up a hashtag on Instagram. What do you want? Do you have any great ideas for the hashtag, Myles, or do you want it to be something that we think about later?
New old world.
New old world.
New old world.
New old world. So
new old world.
It will be new old world, not return to the old world.
I feel like it's a little bit play. Return to Istvan. There's been like a lot of return to projects from it. Yeah, it feels like it's a little bit of a played out trope at this point.
Yeah. So new old world. We'll be selecting basically project from there, post your units more than a full army at this point, because if it's a full army, it's not been slow grown. And maybe next time we come on, we can have a talk about other people's projects that we've basically had a look at and flagged up from there.
Yeah. And if you did want further support, you could go on the Lil Legend Discord server. It's completely free to join. There are links. So every week I post up a link for free via the Patreon. Anybody can access it. You can find the Discord link in that. And then you can post in there. There's a really nice community in there at the moment. We are pledging for our first month. Because it's January, it's a rather light pledge. It's declare what faction you are going for, what is the intention behind your project. So a lot of students, they may want to cut their teeth on non-metallic metal, they might want to do weathering, they might want to improve their sense of basing, or they might want to produce a gaming army of them. So declare your intention. How many points roughly are you thinking about aiming for, just to give you that moon to shoot towards? And then for bonus points, a test model as well. Which I haven't got round to doing myself. But throughout the year, we're going to be encouraging each other, doing this slow grow. We're going to keep each other accountable during the months. And then hopefully by the end of it, we'll have a rather handsome Warhammer Fantasy army collected as a group for all of us.
Yeah. If anyone is interested in watching a game of the old world, I'll be playing a battle report with Phil on the 20th, and I'll be rushing to release that so that it gets out on the night of the 20th, and that'll be my Hordes of Chaos versus Phil's Beastmen in the start of our path to glory to find the Whip of Destiny, which will make our leaders the greatest Chaos champion in the old world. And then
it's a powerful whip.
So that's on the 20th. Before that, on the 16th, I'll be doing a rundown of the core base rules that you need to know, or the most important base rules that you need to know, such as the magic phase or how units are going to interact. And that's because me and Phil have been scouring everything that has been released to get like guerrilla miniature games, whatever battle reports, to get all the information we can. And we'll be doing that on the 16th, as I say, that's Tuesday. And with that, shall we close it out?
Yeah, see you later, suckers.
See you next time.